Oh, it's fun. I never know what to. Oh, hi. It's Charlotte Pierce. I'm the producer of Ready Row USA, and I'm here with two of my favorite people in rowing, Coach Brian D. Dominici. Did I say that right, Brian?
Close enough.
Okay, Dominici. And Diane Bevan. And they're both, Brian does coaching in the Boston area, and I think not just at CRI, but other clubs on the Charles River, right?
I haven't. So I haven't been at CRI for a little while now.
Okay.
The master's coach at Cambridge Boat Club, and I'm the program director and girls coach for Brookline Rowing, which is just a local high school.
And I've taken many coaching lessons from you, and I really appreciated them. Diane is a member at CRI and a former sculling coordinator, and like me, started rowing later in life, and that's the topic of our episode today. It's, can you start rowing at a certain age? Is how they put it. Brian, you don't know that yet, but you may get
that certain age thing.
A certain age. I like it better than, like elderly rowers or something,
Right, exactly.
But anyway, the Ready Row USA is a podcast and live stream. We come out about twice a month, and we talk to people. Our focus in all people in all aspects of rowing, and our focus this year and probably going forward into the foreseeable future is expanding access to the sport of rowing, just getting more people involved in it, because we are, like, I don't know if I speak for you, Diane, but I'm addicted to it. I think it's a good thing to be addicted to. So I'm going to go back and do my magic behind the scenes. Let me know when you want a question. And we have some live viewers, and then at the end, I'll come on and acknowledge our sponsors, and we'll talk about some upcoming episodes. So thank you, guys, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlotte. Well, when you asked me to do this session about rowers of a certain age, I have to say I have a good story about that, and I started in my 50s. And I'm no longer in my 50s, but I am, like you, addicted. And I'll tell a really short story. So when I first moved to Boston, which was more than 20 years ago, my younger sister and I decided, because we do a lot of hiking and things together, that we would learn how to row, and that didn't happen. But then when I got into my 50s, I have a friend, Maureen, and we met learning how to play golf together. And along the way of doing other things and keeping active, at those certain ages, we decided we were going to learn how to row, and we didn't know where to go. So I went to our local coffee place called Karma Coffee here in Sudbury. And there was this tall young woman there who had Weston Wayland Crew on her shirt. And I said, "Hey, where should I go to learn how to row?" And she said, "Go to Community Rowing and make sure you take classes from Brian." So Brian, you may not know that, but that's how I got there. And you were my first learning to row coach. So somehow we've survived, and thank you for your patience.
Do you remember the name of the girl?
Catherine Carpenter. I think she was from Wayland High School. She was pretty awesome. And then every time I would come in after rowing, a couple of times drenched, because I did fall in, she would ask me how my row was, and she was great.
Oh, she was working there.
She was working there, yeah. And I think she had graduated from high school.
It's Catherine Chappell. I think it's Catherine Chappell.
Oh, Chappell, that's it. Catherine Chappell.
Yes, that would be my, yeah.
Much taller and much longer arms, and so I thought, I'm not really suited for rowing because I don't look like that, but it all works out.
She's coaching there now, actually.
Really? That's great.
Yeah, she's the boys' assistant for Wayland Weston. Yeah.
That's great. Well, so Charlotte, in your description, you talked about things being creaky when you get older, and taking on new sport sometimes is a little daunting. So I will admit that I don't have joints that creak because I have 2 spanking new hips. But I had to look for something that was lower impact, and I thought rowing looked really cool. So I started taking classes. And I guess I just wanted to start off, Brian, asking you, as you coach now at CBC and on the river a lot, what do you see in terms of rowers that are our age or my age and older and getting there? Are there more people rowing? And do you see a lot of people joining classes and getting on the river?
The river is definitely more busy every year. There's more boats out there. And not only am I seeing sort of more people that are learning and in those stages of learning, there's also, at CBC, I'm sort of at the other end of it. And CBC now has a large number of masters rowers that are well into their 80s. And a lot of them picked it up later on. A lot of them picked it up later in life, well into their 50s and 60s, and it's been something that they've been able to do for long periods of time, in terms of like a new sport, in terms of something that keeps them active. Um, so it's definitely something that is growing, and opportunities on the river are growing. There's mostly, I mean, for the Charles, it's largely out of CRI, for the real sort of learn to row masters opportunities.
Yeah,
Um, and as they just keep growing, they just keep expanding programs, and for the people that are willing to put the time in on it, it can be something that they can do as long as they can do just about anything.
absolutely. So let's say I'm thinking of signing up. What can I expect as someone who's never rowed before? Signed up for class, taken the plunge. What happens when I come to learn to row?
You should show up, and you should expect for it not to feel or seem anything like you expected it to be. So most of the people that I have taught many learn to row classes, and the people that actually sort of pick it up the best are the people that don't come into it with a preconceived understanding of what they think it should feel like, or if they've been in a kayak before, or if they've been in a rowboat before, like a fishing type rowboat or a wherry. um, those It's not going to feel like that. And when you come into it, and most of the coaches, when they're teaching you, they're going to teach you in these, if you're taking say you're taking a sculling class, they're going to teach you in a fairly stable boat, but all the things they're teaching you are geared towards you getting into this very tiny racing single. So all the procedures, all the balance, all the technique and posture, that's all geared towards you being able to eventually row in a racing single, which is about 12 or 13 inches wide. So the people that are going to pick up on it the best are the people that are going to sort of push out of their heads what they think this sort of like rowing motion is going to feel like, and just approach it as if it's something entirely new, which for a lot of them it is anyway. Because the more you are able to apply that stuff to the boat that feels a little bit stable, the more you're going to be able to apply that when it comes time to get into an unstable boat. And a perfect example of that is, when I was at CRI, you didn't have a lot of people flip the boat in sculling one. You would think there'd be more people flipping in sculling one than sculling two, but
Yeah.
the real test is, can you apply the stuff you learned in the stable boat as you go into the less stable boat? So the people that said, yes, I can get in and out of this boat, and I know what I'm doing, and I don't really need to think about how they're saying to do this. Those are the people that now get into the next level up boat and roll over because they didn't spend the time practicing it in the stable boat. So if I would say, come in with no expectations, come in wanting to learn something new, come in open to the idea that it is going to feel uncomfortable and unstable a little bit at first. But if you do what the coach is telling you and you take it step by step, you can pick it up. You can pick it up pretty quickly. And a lot of times it's more these preconceived ideas of what rowing is and what rowing should feel like that I see slow people down.
So what do you think the hardest thing is for most people to learn? I guess coming in with expectations or not. What do you think the hardest thing is to adjust to, coming from probably canoeing or kayaking or any other
The
kind of boating?
language, the processing is the hardest thing. Um, the skills, the skills come, but everything a coach is trying to tell you is coming through language, and rowing has its own language, right? And it's boat language. So some people know port and starboard, but you're sitting backwards in a boat. So a lot of times, people are sitting there and they often think of port being left and starboard being right, but you're facing the other way. Um, all the commands about moving your hands and turning the boat, stopping the boat, they're all weird words that when I was teaching classes, I would generally double say words. So if I wanted someone to stop, I would say stop, and then I would say way enough, or I'd say way enough, and I would say stop. Way enough is the rowing word for stop, which comes all the way back from like, you know, whaling ships. Um, but you have to double up on the language, because not only is someone learning a new skill, but they're learning these new words that they are going to need. If you're out on the Charles River rowing a single alone, you have to know what they mean. You have to know the names of the bridges. You have to know what way enough means, because if someone's screaming way enough at you and you just keep going, it's not safe. So I would say that, and sort of the procedural things of getting in and out of the boat, of setting yourself up um, to be safe and be competent and be comfortable in the boat. Those are the things that a lot of times people aren't patient enough to sit through. And if you don't learn that stuff, it becomes harder for a coach to communicate to you later on down the line. Most of the time, I would tell people that there are no skills and what this is when it was set up. I think the structure is a little different at CRI now, but when I was at CRI, I would say sculling one, there's no rowing skill that I'm going to teach you in sculling one that a sculling two coach or myself in sculling two is not responsible for repeating. When you move on to sculling two, it is a review and a refinement of the skills you started in sculling one. That's the process. The stuff you really need in sculling one is the boatmanship, carrying your boat, putting your boat in and out of the water, setting it up correctly, understanding how your boat needs to be set up so it fits you, stopping, going, turning, docking, steering. These are the things that if you don't learn those things to begin with, the actual skill of rowing, the ability to make a rowing shell like sail across the water, it's moot. It doesn't mean anything. So those are the things that someone coming into it will need to have the patience to kind of just sit down and absorb and learn, and it will make their next couple of weeks much more enjoyable than if they, I've had people show up and 2 weeks into a class and say that they've been rowing their fishing boat since they were a kid and they didn't need to show up for the first couple classes, and then most of the time, but they learn really quick that these other people that have never done it before are going faster than them because they didn't spend time on the basics.
Got it. Well, I will remember that although there is certain rowing language, one of the things you taught me, and I don't know, this is 6 years ago now, is that I remember on the actual rowing stroke, when you're doing your stroke, it's like opening a bag of chips. And when you're putting your oars in on the catch, it's like pop. So I'm like, bag of chips, pop. And I still remember to this day, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. But it worked.
The bag of chips I stole. I got that from another coach, but it is effective.
Well,
it is the right.
Let me tell you, whatever works to get in here, because I'm getting older, so I don't remember all the details. That was a really good one.
That's a great example of how, when you're coming into rowing, you're not gonna, like, for someone who's never done rowing before, telling them that the end of the stroke where you take the blade out of the water feels like opening a bag of chips. It's not going to make any sense to somebody who's never actually done it.
Right.
But
Right.
the feel is very different, right? What you come into it with, what you think it's going to feel like, you have to, the coach is trying to sort of convey that you need to be open to feeling different things and letting it feel uncomfortable or not the way you would expect it to be.
Right, exactly, and relaxing. So, another question I have is, do you have to be an early bird to row? Because it seems like most of the movies and most of the people you see on the river are there crack of dawn. All the college students are crack of dawn. Um, do you have to
Not
get
at
up
CRI,
early?
you don't. Not at CRI.
All right, well that's
they
good.
they have they have evening classes, and that's um, those are probably in some ways those are better. Coaching it presents more difficulties because if you start at the crack of dawn and things are light, I'm sorry, things are dark and things are getting lighter, any problems you run into safety wise or organizational wise, those get better as the session goes on. Any evening classes, those get worse. As like if you have an organizational problem and you're late, or if you have an equipment problem and a boat gets stuck and you need to work on getting that boat back to the dock, the light is on its way out. From a coaching perspective, that's the difference. From a rowing perspective, if you're much better in the evening, take an evening class or do an evening group.
Evening session, yeah. So, what are the options for rowers once they learn the basics of sculling in terms of types of boats? Right. We know there's singles, and that's originally what I signed up to do. Was like, I'm an individual. I'm going to row by myself, and that's that. But what other options are open to people learning how to row?
So it'll depend on where you go and um, what you're interested in, what your interest is. If you are athletic and it's something that you really want to take up as a sport, you would be looking for oftentimes you'd be looking for a group because that's the way you're going to get better. It's
Yeah.
going to be hard to go out. Now people can't do it, obviously, but it's hard to go out in a single alone and execute a training plan if you've never been a competitive rower before. So oftentimes you'll go out and you can go out in groups of singles, you can go out in doubles or quads, or if you're a sweep rower, generally speaking, you're going to be in fours and eights, pairs. People generally learn to row in fours and eights before they learn to row pairs. It's kind of the opposite. Sculling, a lot of times, you'll learn to row the one man boat, and then two and three all the way up to four. Um, a sweep boat is the pair is one of the more difficult boats to row. So the options for the various boats are often dependent on what your goals are. And if your goal is just general fitness and you don't want to race, a single works just fine. You can do it in a recreational single. You don't need to be in a racing single. I've had plenty of people learn to row. They maybe spend a couple times in a racing single, say this isn't for me. I'm perfectly happy with the more stable recreational boat, and they go out and do their mirrors. There's people that do both. There's people at CRI that when the water's cold and when the weather's bad, they go out in their recreational or like the ocean single, and then on days when it's calm and the water's flat, they go out in the racing single. So there's all kinds of options for what you want to be in. The challenge is finding the opportunities in the groups, and CRI again is the place to do that. For the less experienced person, they got tons of opportunities for people to be in recreational groups that get you ready to go into something a little faster or a little more competitive down the road.
Yeah, I did find that although I got into it to row singles, then suddenly you learn how to steer and be a bow person, and it's really, really fun to do doubles and quads, and a totally different experience, and probably one of the best team experiences you'll ever have, where you really have to work together. And I just think it really it made me appreciate the strength of the community of rowers that are out there, and also the options. Often with other boat houses, so we went to Asheville, North Carolina, and I sent a letter to the rowing club there, and was able to row with them in one of their doubles and quads, because we sort of reciprocated and met a whole new group of people who shared that same interest. So I guess there's a lot of opportunity to be part of pretty much a global community of people from all walks of life once you learn those skills to be able to steer or row with other people, and what that language is, and how to make it happen.
There's a couple Rolodex teams out there, and there's a bunch of members of CRI that are part of them. There's a number of CBC members that are part of their own, and it's basically, there's races on either coast. You're either going to San Diego Crew Classic or you're going ahead of the Charles, and they fly in and they just row together, right? They don't practice. They train on their own and they train with their own groups. And then for these races, they come together, they practice a few times, and then they race. So
Pretty cool.
there's if you know the right people, there's those options as well.
Yeah. So where are different places, or how do you find out about where you can take classes to learn how to row? Are there resources? If it's not CRI where we're both in the Boston area, but let's say you're not in the Boston area, where might you find learn to row classes?
I would just Google your city and rowing and see what comes up, because there's not going to be a ton of clubs,
Yeah.
but there are, and it depends on your area. They tend to be more dense where there are clubs, which is sort of redundant thing to say, but Boston,
Near water.
near water, and there's a rowing culture in Boston, and there's going to be a lot of clubs. Now, not every city is going to have like a big club that teaches people to row. Like Philadelphia is a very,
Mhm.
a lot of rowing culture in Philadelphia, but there's not, Philadelphia doesn't have a CRI. It's a lot of smaller clubs where, yes, you can totally learn to row, but it's not going to be the same sort of environment as CRI. And it's worth looking into. It's either with something like CRI, there's not a lot of those places in the country or in the world for that matter. They are popping up. There are more and more larger clubs coming in. But just, Google the city you're in and rowing, and a bunch of clubs are going to come up, and you go to that club page and you see if they offer sculling lessons or if they offer group lessons. A lot of times they'll have a coach that could do private lessons to teach. And some clubs don't. Like, CBC offers, they have learn to row for sort of youth, right? They do a youth
Mhm.
learn to row program that's in the summer. But some clubs are not geared towards learning to row. They're more geared towards training and, membership.
Yeah, I know there's camps out there as well that you can sign up for, but I think that's usually to enhance your skills as opposed to learn.
Hey,
Camp, if depends if you're youth, right? Camp can mean
Yeah.
any kind of thing, because a lot of colleges have camps, and they're not really, it may seem like it's a recruiting tool, but it's more like they're bringing kids in and they're doing a camp. Whereas other summer programs like the CBC Juniors is a very sort of high performance focused group of youth that are, again, looking to be recruited, but it's a very different thing than like a 2-week camp or a 1-week camp.
Got it.
hey, so I just wanted to pop back in and say we have like 5 minutes left and we have a special guest. I'm so
Woohoo!
excited. One of my other favorite rowers is Danny Hansen. Hi, Danny. How
Hey
you doing?
everyone, I'm great.
Hi,
How are
Danny.
you? I'm on my
Danny-
phone over here, so sorry for
That's
the
cool.
weird picture.
We're informal and we're like stream of consciousness here. So,
Love it.
but Danny is a hydro athlete. So I don't know. How do you describe hydro for people who don't know what it is?
We're basically just a connected fitness rowing machine. So
Connected fitness rowing.
yeah,
And a Paralympic athlete of
Yep.
great accomplishment. So welcome. Thanks for
you.
helping us talk about. We're all about expanding the access to the sport of rowing this year and going forward. So I thought you're a great person, you're a great evangelist for the sport, and someone who's really, I don't know, inspired me. So
Thank you.
yeah, and we do have some questions from our lovely listeners. Thank you for tuning in. But
Awesome.
so Diane, you wanted me to roll some questions, and
Yeah, that would be
Andy or
great.
Brian can answer them. I had one. How important is it to have an ergometer at home for conditioning and technique? Of course, I have a hydro, but Um, but I know people say, do I need to get one of these machines? What do you think?
I mean, I think it just depends on your lifestyle. I think definitely like doing the research is really good. Deciding what your goals are before you kind of like make some sort of a purchase like that is really important. So knowing why you're getting one, is it just to stay in shape? That might change your decision. Or if it's like, elite training or if it's cross training, I think definitely those things are things to keep in mind before you make a big
Right.
purchase like that.
Or if you just need a drying rack for your underwear.
Yeah, that too. Laundry, right? We all do it.
Brian, any thoughts about that?
I think that if you're going to buy a rowing machine for the purpose of training, like Danny said, don't skimp on it. So
Yeah.
you either buy like a Concept 2 if you're interested in like any sort of comparison, sort of you do it on the Concept 2, so you kind of know what the standards are, and there's plenty of resources to know like what level of people are going at what speed and where you kind of fall. If you have sort of back issues, you can get a dynamic which moves a little bit different. Instead of your body weight moving, the erg sort of the rowing machine slides back and forth. If you want a little more motivation, you think you need more to get on the erg, then the hydro is so. But I think if you go into a department store and just buy the floor model rowing machine, it's not going to feel right. It's not going to relate well to anything that you're trying to do in the boat. So I would say if you are going to make that investment, make the investment. On the other hand, there's plenty of people at CBC that are masters that row at a high level that do not a lot of erging. In the winter they do some erging, but they bike or they swim or they run, because for them it's the periodization, meaning they spend their time in the boat using those muscles, and then in the off season they want to give those muscles a rest and they want to cross train elsewhere. So I would say it's a tool, and you just have to treat it as such.
Yeah.
You have let's see. Someone was asking about, like, I don't know. I've noticed this as I get older, my skin is actually thinner, and some people have problems with their calves, and some people have problems with their hands and blisters and things like that. And a coach once told me that, yeah, you're getting older, it's you're going to get a little more blistering. Is this something that people, I don't know. I find that my hands toughen up after a few weeks. So I don't know.
They do sell.
If you don't have
They do
blisters, you're not rowing.
Yeah, that's right. You got to
Yes.
push through the pain.
Yeah, and no nails.
Right. Sorry.
Blisters.
Yeah.
For the masters, there's a lot of people there are a couple people at CBC and a bunch at CRI that they sell these rowing gloves, and I know it's faux pas to say rowing gloves, but to be honest, if that's what gets you out there to do it, then that's what gets you out there to do it. I mean, I have one of my girls going to nationals this week, just went to the doctor to get antibiotics because she's a little worried about a blister that she thinks might be infected. So like getting an infection and a blister is a big deal, right? It's not something you want to mess around with. So if having gloves on or taping your hands up, if that's what gets you out there, then I'm not really particularly in favor of the whole thing where you have to be that tough. Yes, it is better in the long run to have your hands adapt, but some people aren't going to. Like I stopped getting blisters, a year or two into rowing. I didn't get them that bad, but some people just get them forever. And if it's going to stop you from rowing, go on Amazon and get a pair of gloves that are meant for rowing, and you'll be fine.
We're actually giving away a pair of gloves from Crew Stop. So if you use the hashtag ReadyRowUSA on social media, you can win a pair.
Oh, I love that. Well, I was gonna say, I think rowing should be accessible to everyone. Even if you're a hand model, you should be able to row. So get yourself a pair of gloves. You don't have to worry about it.
Whatever it takes. I do have.
That shouldn't be what's stopping you.
Yeah, I know we're running maybe to the end of our time, but I did want to say, just thinking about today, which was Learn to Row Day, and why we're doing this, which is encouraging people who've thought about it jumping in at whatever age we're at to learn how to row. And I was able to, had the honor of being co-captain at CRI of the sculling group. And I work with Brian's wife, Anna, who is a sculling coordinator there and an awesome coach in her own right. And we did a little survey before the annual meeting of our sculling community, which means you pass the test, you're competent to be able to take a boat out on your own or check out a double or quad or whatever it is. And we said, you know, why do you row? And we got 218 responses. I have my little survey results here. And it was kind of cool. So the first response that got most people responding was just for exercise. It is really good, really hard exercise. It's more, you'll burn more calories than you'll ever burn riding a bike, rowing. The second one was actually community, which I thought was really interesting, that you join a community of people who are passionate about this, love getting on the river, and are totally supportive of one another. The third one was that it's a really great team sport. So if you're in a double or a quad, you have to coordinate and work together. Otherwise, it really doesn't work out. And that was pretty cool. The next one was people have rowed in the past. Another one was competition for therapy. And the largest response was joy.
Yeah.
Absolute joy of rowing. So I thought that was
I know you put your boat in the
great reason
water.
to start. Yeah.
The first 10 strokes, it's just like, I'm here, you know. We have a question, maybe we can close out soon, but I don't mind going a little bit over, but from the famous Bloody Blah.
Love it.
Thank you for chiming in, Bloody Blah. Flipped a single while spinning carelessly. How can I not be scared to go out in a single again?
I got this. I can absolutely. I was terrified after I flipped for the first time, and I just decided that I think I was more scared of being scared of it. Like, I think you just have to be like, oh, I'm okay. It's okay to be scared of something, and it doesn't mean like something bad is going to happen just because you're scared. So I think just understanding that mentality and kind of just like approaching it that way the next time, just being like, okay, it's okay if I'm scared, I'm going to do it anyway. So I think just have a conversation with yourself. Are you going to not do it because you're scared, or do you just not like being scared? Does it make you uncomfortable? I think that's a good thing to think about, but definitely just go for it no matter how you're feeling. Make sure you tell someone you're going on the water if you're worried, or make sure someone's in a launch going with you to just like keep an eye out and be there for you. But just getting back on the water is, getting back on the horse. That's what I would say.
I discovered that I'm waterproof, so I haven't actually drowned by falling in the water. So that, but I don't want to make anybody do unsafe things like going in cold water and stuff like that. But
everybody has flipped their single, and
Exactly.
flipping while spinning is probably flipping while spinning is probably the most mundane way to do it. A lot of people flip while spinning. I flipped. I hit a pole. It was a signpost in the water with no sign on it, so I didn't see it, and I was still holding my oars under the water because I flipped so fast.
Yeah.
I would say if you have a plan in place, if you practice getting back in, if you can get someone with a safety launcher, if you can do it in shallow water, practice getting back in, practice swimming the boat, like just get in the water, like wade. It depends on where you are. Like a lot of times on the Charles River, people that are worried about flipping, they don't go into areas where they can't get themselves to shore because they don't want to have to get back into the boat and water over their head. You could go out in a stable boat until you get more comfortable. But it's more about, I think a lot of times what I found is people's fear from flipping comes more from the fact that they can't control it than the actual flip. It's not because they're flipping, it's because it's happening and they can't stop it. It's like rock climbing. Rock climbing is great. You climb and then you feel like you're going to fall and you let go of the wall and you go back on the rope. But it's way, way, way different when you're climbing up the wall and suddenly for the first time you slip and you didn't mean to slip, right? It's an entirely different feeling. And it's the same way flipping a single. Like it is that moment where it feels like it takes forever for that thing to flip over and it's happening and there's nothing you can do about it. That is a feeling of being out. It is a feeling of being out of control. And I think it is that feeling that is really what scares most people, rather than the actual, if you were
Mhm.
really afraid of the water, you wouldn't be in the boat to begin with.
Yeah.
And they float.
Yeah.
The boats float.
They do
The
float.
boats float.
So do
Yeah.
humans,
Swim on the
most of the
water.
time.
Yeah. And we could do,
Yeah.
we are going to do a whole safety thing too later in the year. But I just wanted to mention our fabulous sponsors, because they make it possible for us to do this fun show. And also like to encourage people, if you have a rowing club or you're a member of a rowing club, I'd love to do a spotlight on your club. It doesn't matter where it is or how small it is or how big it is. We like to spotlight these wonderful clubs and communities around the country. And so please contact us at readyrowusa.com. We also get a lot of equipment and expertise and coaching on media from Arlington Community Media. It's a great community resource. It's free. Your community may have a community media station where you can learn about video and audio and get equipment for free. So I love those people. It's just like another great community, like the Rowing Club. Pierce Press is my publishing company. I have a couple of children's books out recently, and they're about environmental issues and kind of diversity and things like that. Laura Williams is my web designer. She does actually 5 websites for me. Laura Williams Pages is her site, and she's wonderful to work with. And everybody, y'all know Burnham Boat Slings. Burnham Boat is one of the best companies out there. Really nice folks. And if you go to a regatta, do stop by Burnham Boat. They have all sorts of great boat covers and accessories. Rowing Parts Supply. Jason Cottingham does our ocean rowing hosting series. I don't know, Diane, did you see the episode with Laura Vafiatis? Yeah, she rowed across the oceans solo, and it was just an amazing story. I got goosebumps.
Now I would be worried about slipping.
She was scared of going into water first, and then they have to go and clean off the bottom of the boat periodically. So she had to get in the frigging ocean and do this. It's amazing. Anyway, so those are our sponsors and acknowledgments. And anybody else want to have a final word?
Thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome. Yeah. And let's get together again. We're going to be doing a Pride rowing series episode. And actually behind me in my fake background that's me on Pride Day in 2019, I think, on the Charles River. So appreciate everybody coming by, and
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Thank you for stopping in. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye.